I want you to please encourage you to sit back and relax and try and remove some of the distractions. And as Rachel mentioned, if you have any questions, you can chat them or drop them in the chat thread, or just jot them down, and we have a section at the end that will go through all of that. So moving on, let's see. Some signs, 8 top signs that your gut perhaps needs a reset. These are my 8 top favorite, the most common. So things like bloating and or being tired after eating, having an interrupted sleep pattern.
I know all that.
Waking up tired.
They're all me.
Put it on your lap.
I think we've got some interference still. Being constipated, diarrhea, and or having gas. So this is something that we're often afraid to speak about, but something that I refer to as the waste disposal system. It is a key sign of some problems with your gut. If you're not having waste disposal at least once to twice a day, and if you're having intervals between being constipated, diarrhea, and or having gas. So that's a key sign. Another sign that your gut perhaps needs some attention is the recovery takes longer. So that's recovery from exercise, and also just recovery from illness if it's taking longer than normal. Another sign is skin irritation. So that can be in the form of psoriasis or eczema, or some dullness under the eyes, or some just redness or dry patches, or quite often sometimes if you cut yourself and it takes too long to repair, or you develop a rash around it, that's another sign that things aren't working as well as they should be, along with getting sick easily. So essentially, if you're getting sick, there's obviously seasonal changes, and obviously a lot of corona, etc. out there at the moment. But if you're finding that you're getting sick more than once or twice a year, or more than you would normally, then that's also a sign that perhaps your immunity and your gut is not up to scratch. Another key sign is aching joints, so in the knees, shoulders. Again, if you've been exercising and it's past the standard 1 to 2 days of after exercise repair, if it's continuing, then that's a sign that things aren't working. And then weight gain. So if you're eating the same things, I often hear eating the same things, exercising the same, but still putting on weight. So that is a sign that perhaps your gut needs a reset. And I will explain all of that now, and I'll explain how it affects your weight gain over the next couple of slides. But one thing also, before I move on, that I want you to try and remember, there's always this expression of, you are what you eat, or, food impacts everything, but it's not just what you eat. What I want you to try and remember through this presentation is, it's a 4-step process. It's what you eat, and then what your gut is able to digest. And then from that, it's what your gut is able to convert into nutrients. And then those nutrients then get past your gut lining into your bloodstream and into your cells. So there's 4 actual stages. But the first one is obviously what you're feeding yourself with. And the second one is digestion. So if you don't get through those first 2 stages, then nutrients and absorption into your cells is being impaired. So quite often, unfortunately, even though we're in a society of having ample amounts of food, we are actually walking around to a large percentage malnourished, because those 4 stages are key. And if you're not getting through those 4 stages, then it's impacting the amount of nutrition that you're getting into your bloodstream. And then that impacts what's getting into your cell, which impacts things like energy production and cellular metabolism. So try not to think of it just as what you're eating. It's important. It's very important, as I'll explain, but there's 4 stages. It's eating, digesting, converting, and then absorbing. So I'll explain a little bit more about that. Now, move down. So obviously there's a lot of press about what gut microbiome is and bacteria. So this is just a key, a slide just giving a very quick explanation. So your gut contains between 300 and 500 different types of bacteria. Now, the first thing I want you to think about before I move on to the next few points is that bacteria is not, and your gut in particular, is not fueled by oxygen like most of the organs in our system. Your gut is actually 100% fueled by the breakdown of fiber. So the diversification of your bacteria and the health of that bacteria completely relies on getting fuel from fiber. So obviously fiber is very beneficial to us for the nutritional value, but I want you to understand that your gut relies on it, and the bacteria and your microbiome relies on that for fuel. So no oxygen, it needs to have that fiber in order to function for you, in order to be able to digest the food, convert it and absorb it. So a lot of people don't realize that. So when I'm consuming fiber, I think of it as a twofold benefit. One, I'm giving oxygen to my stomach, or that form of oxygen to my stomach, and then giving it the fuel that it needs to basically digest the food. So then we move on to microbiome. So basically your bacteria is paired with tiny organisms like viruses and fungi, and they make microbiome. So that's essentially the connection between bacteria and microbiome. So they both work together. And the diversity, or your individual diversity, is first of all initially impacted by your mother. So you pick that up through the birth canal or a swab if you were delivered by cesarean. And then it's influenced by your environment, your diet and lifestyle. And therefore it's completely unique to you. So no two people have the same level of bacteria and microbiome. And having a more varied gut microbiome basically improves your health and reduces the risk of disease. In fact, they found that unfortunately in the Western civilization, because our eating habits have changed somewhat, the diversity of our stomach bacteria has reduced by at least 30% over the last probably 30 to 40 years. And if you compare a Western person's level of bacteria versus non-Western, we've got about half. And you'll generally find, unfortunately, in non-Westernized civilizations, the risk of disease for them is a lot less than what we are currently experiencing. So the more diverse your bacteria, the better. And we can influence that. Another really good important thing to remember is exercise can actually encourage the growth of a variety of bacteria. And that is because when you exercise, you stimulate a fatty acid called butyrate, which actually seals your stomach lining, reduces inflammation, and therefore increases the diversity of bacteria by strengthening your stomach lining. So that's another added benefit of exercising, as well as the fact that it actually stimulates peristalsis. So that's clearance of your gut into your upper and lower intestines, which is also very important for diversification. So then, I'm going to go back. Why is gut health so important? I mean, I think probably from what I've said already, you're starting to see the importance of it. Obviously, it ensures healthy digestion. So again, the greater diversity of your bacteria, then the greater the ability to break down food. That food is then converted into nutrients and then gets into your cells, which influences your cellular metabolism and your metabolism, which therefore then impacts your weight and your energy. Because as soon as the nutrients get into the cell, again, they determine your cellular metabolism function, your thyroid function, and then also your energy production in something called ATP. So that's 100% reliant on those nutrients getting into the cell. And the step before that is the digestion, which requires, a diversity of bacteria. It also affects your mood and emotion. A lot of people don't understand that there's something between your gut and your brain. It's called the gut-brain axis, which makes sense. But the traffic is 90% from, as in the signaling, is 90% from your gut to your brain, not the other way. So your brain is 100% or 90% reliant on the health of your stomach for functioning. So, I think that in itself is such a key piece of information. and there's been so many studies showing the impacts of a food intake, a change in food intake, and increase in fiber on things like anxiety and depression. But essentially, your brain is reliant on good, healthy messaging from your stomach in order to function, and therefore it affects your mood and emotion. It also governs your ability to fight infection and inflammation. So 70% of your immune function is housed in your gut. So again, the health of your gut and diversity of your bacteria will actually then increase your ability to fight off infection and inflammation. It also greatly affects hormone regulation, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But all hormones interrelate. That's one thing to remember. No hormone acts independently. So always try and remember that. You know, if you make a change to one hormone, it will always impact something else. So that's why it's important to understand those hormones that are being largely produced in your stomach and how you can affect them. So the main hormones that are produced in your stomach that I want you to try and remember is, well, the first one there is 90% of your serotonin is produced in your stomach. Now, I think a lot of people know about serotonin, or maybe not so much, but the fact is that it affects your mood, your sleep, and your pain regulation. Now, the number one reason why this is important is the sleep factor there. And the reason why it impacts sleep is because serotonin is a precursor for melatonin. So I think a lot of people have probably heard about melatonin, but melatonin obviously is what you rely on for sleep. So if your serotonin production is not working, then your melatonin production will not work. That one relies on the other. So therefore, if you're not getting enough sleep, we know that impacts our mood, but also sleep, you know, lack of sleep also very much impacts how we perceive pain and regulates pain and inflammation. So a very important reason there why gut health is so important in terms of serotonin. The next one is dopamine, which is known as the happy hormone, is also produced in your stomach by 50%, affecting your focus and muscle control. Then there's something called cholecystokinin hormone, which is produced in your stomach, and its function is to regulate hunger. But by basically doing two things, it communicates with your digestive system on when it's time to move things from your stomach into your upper intestine, but also it communicates the feeling of satiety, so fullness. So if this hormone is not necessarily working, it will not only impact the movement of food from one section of your digestive system into the next, but it will also interfere with your when you've had enough. But it also interrelates with another hormone called ghrelin, which I call the ghrelin hormone, because that determines also when you've had enough. So quite often, sometimes when that particular hormone is not functioning, you'll find that you can keep eating and you're not feeling full. In fact, you keep wanting to eat. So that's why I call it the ghrelin, because when that is not functioning properly, that can obviously lead to blood sugar issues and weight gain, because it very much has a big influence on also what proportion of the food that you eat is converted into fat and also into sugar. So it has a huge impact on your blood sugar levels. So the benefits of doing a reset, I think hopefully that's becoming clear right now, but you're definitely going to experience more energy. So the greater diversity of your intake, then the greater chance you have to digest the food, convert that food into nutrients, and those nutrients to be absorbed into your cells. That's what we're aiming for, and that's what we can greatly influence. So naturally, energy production is going to be enhanced. Along with that, your mood is going to be, again, remember that the messaging from your gut to your brain is 90% in one direction. Improve sleep. Remember, we've talked about serotonin is 90% produced in your gut. You need serotonin to produce melatonin. Decreased bloating definitely will be a side effect. Number one, through the fact that you're actually giving your stomach the fuel it needs to digest. So we're already going to be digesting food a lot better than you would have otherwise. but also in combination with exercise, which we've talked about, which is why this program is so important. It produces that other fatty acid called butyrate, which will strengthen your gut lining, increase fighting of inflammation, and greater enhance the diversification of your stomach bacteria. It boosts recovery time, because essentially, if you're fueling your cells correctly, they have a greater ability to actually service you. Helps to balance hormones. Remember, I said hormones interact. They don't act independently. So the greater the health of the hormones that are produced in your stomach, then the greater greater chance you have to balance out other hormones. Improves digestion without a doubt, because you're changing the way you're eating, and you're giving your stomach the fuel that it needs to function. Another great benefit of this is quite often you will find by removal of some foods, which you will be throughout the program, helps you identify foods that cause you problems. Now, this is not necessarily a fault of you, but production of food has changed over the years. So we do know that certain foods cause inflammation and cause problems. So we do basically work to remove those. So it gives you a 2-week window to basically identify those things and potentially then be able to better handle them going forward. So how does the active reset work? So it's an easy to follow 14-day plan in 3 phases. So and each phase is between 4 and 5 days. It gives you exactly what you need to eat for each of the stages. And the key thing to remember is I would like you to eat as much as you like. There's no restriction here whatsoever. The only restriction is of the foods that we know do not support your gut reset or gut health. It will include recipe ideas for you to follow, a clear shopping list of things that you should have in your fridge and your pantry that will help. Obviously, a list of foods that we want you to exclude, because we know they cause inflammation and they know they impact the diversity of your gut. You will have full access to support and accountability by the Girls Run the World Facebook group, which I encourage you to reach out to, so you have support throughout. And also, someone might ask a question that you've also considered, but the actual reset plan also includes frequently asked questions and health and support tips throughout. So it is quite easy to follow.